Dear seeker, there is one truth that touches every human life, yet remains the hardest to accept: time changes everything. No happiness stays forever, no pain lasts endlessly, no position remains permanent. Still, when change arrives in our own life, we feel confused, frightened, or even betrayed. When life is comfortable, we assume it will remain so. When life becomes difficult, we wonder why it happened to us. In both situations, we forget a simple truth: change is not an exception, it is the rule of existence. More than 2,500 years ago, Gautama Buddha observed this deeply human struggle. He saw that people suffer not only because circumstances change, but because they expect them not to. We cling to success, relationships, youth, power, and certainty, hoping time will spare what we love. But time makes no such promises. The Buddha did not teach this truth in harsh words. He taught it through compassion, silence, and stories that mirror our own lives. His teachings were never meant to create fear about change, but understanding, because when we understand change, we suffer less. Today's story, Waqt Sabka Badalta Hai, is not merely a moral tale. It is a mirror. It reflects our own attachment to good times and our resistance to difficult ones. It reminds us that life moves in cycles: rise and fall, gain and loss, joy and sorrow. Please listen slowly and gently. This is not a story to rush through, nor a lesson to memorize. It is an invitation to see life more clearly, and to make peace with time, instead of fighting it. Let us begin, as seekers, with openness and patience. The illusion of permanence. Dear seeker, the story begins with a man who believed time would always favor him. He was powerful, respected, and surrounded by comfort. His word was law, his future seemed secure, and his present felt unshakable. Like many of us, he quietly assumed that what is will always remain. In this story, that man is a king, but his mindset is not unique. Whether we are rich or poor, successful or struggling, we often fall into the same illusion, the belief that our current state defines our destiny. More than 2,500 years ago, Gautama Buddha observed this illusion again and again. He saw that when life is going well, people rarely question its nature. They begin to believe that happiness is permanent, that power is stable, and that time will pause for their comfort. This belief creates a subtle arrogance, not always outward, but deep within the heart. The king in our story lived under this illusion. Surrounded by praise and protection, he believed his position was earned forever. He planned his life assuming tomorrow would look like today. Yet beneath this confidence was fear. Fear of losing what he had, fear of change, fear of time itself. The Buddha taught that this fear arises from attachment to status, pleasure, identity, and control. In the Dhammapada, he explains that all conditioned things are impermanent, yet humans suffer because they forget this truth when times are good. This section of the story teaches us a gentle warning: when we forget that time changes everything, we become unprepared for life. We do not suffer because change comes, we suffer because we did not expect it. The king's story is not about his downfall yet. It is about his misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding is something each of us must recognize within ourselves before wisdom can arise. The Buddha's silent lesson on time. When the king finally met Gautama Buddha, he expected clear answers, perhaps even a blessing that would protect his power and happiness forever. Like many of us, he wanted assurance, something that would keep time from changing his life. But the Buddha did not respond with immediate words. Instead, he asked the king to bring him something that would never change. At first, the request seemed simple. The king ordered his servants to bring the finest objects from the palace: gold, jewels, rare fabrics, royal symbols. Yet as each item was examined, one truth became obvious: every object could fade, break, be stolen, or lose its value. The king searched harder, growing restless. But no matter how powerful or precious the object, it failed the Buddha's condition. This silence was the teaching. In the Dhammapada, The Buddha explains the principle of Anicca, impermanence, that all conditioned things arise and pass away. He often taught that wisdom does not always come from explanation, but from direct realization. By asking the king to find something permanent, the Buddha gently guided him to discover the truth himself. Time does not spare wealth, status, or identity. What arises must eventually change. The Buddha then spoke softly, explaining that time is not cruel, nor is it kind. It simply follows the law of nature. Kings fall, beggars rise, joy turns to sorrow, and sorrow gives way to peace. This section teaches us a powerful lesson. Understanding impermanence cannot be forced through words alone. It must be seen, felt, and experienced. The Buddha's silence invited the king to confront a reality he had avoided, that no external thing can protect us from change. And with that realization, the seed of wisdom was quietly planted. When time changed the king's life, time moves quietly. It does not announce itself, nor does it ask permission. For a while, the king returned to his palace believing that perhaps his strength, intelligence, or fate would protect him. Life continued as before, comfort, authority, and respect surrounded him once again. But as the Buddha had gently shown, time never stops. Slowly, circumstances began to change. Conflicts arose within the kingdom. Trusted allies turned away. Wealth that once felt endless began to disappear. The king's authority weakened, not overnight, but step by step, just as time works in real life. What hurt the king most was not the loss itself, but the shock of it. He had believed that his position defined him. When that position collapsed, so did his sense of self. Those who once bowed to him now ignored him. Places that once welcomed him felt distant and cold. In the Samyutta Nikaya, Gautama Buddha taught that suffering does not arise simply because conditions change, but because we cling to conditions that must change. The king's pain was not created by loss alone. It was created by his belief that loss should not have happened. As hardship deepened, the king remembered the Buddha's silent lesson. He realized that time had not betrayed him. Time had simply revealed the truth he had avoided, that nothing external can provide lasting security. This stage of the story is deeply human. Many of us only understand impermanence when life takes something away. When success fades, when relationships change, when health weakens, time teaches us what words could not. The king's fall was not a punishment. It was a lesson unfolding. And in that suffering, something new began to grow: humility, awareness, and the first quiet acceptance that time changes everything. The king returns, changed by time. When time had stripped the king of his power, comfort, and pride, something unexpected happened. Silence entered his heart. The noise of praise was gone. The fear of loss had already taken what it could. In that quietness, memory returned. The king remembered the calm eyes of Gautama Buddha. He remembered the question that had once frustrated him: find something that never changes. Only now did he understand why no answer had appeared. With no palace left to return to, the former king walked toward the Buddha, not as a ruler seeking protection, but as a human being seeking understanding. His steps were slow, his head bowed, his heart heavy but honest. When he reached the Buddha, he did not complain about fate. He did not curse time. Instead, he asked quietly, "Why does time change everything, even when we try so hard to hold on?" The Buddha looked at him with compassion and replied gently, "Time does not change things to harm you. It changes things to teach you." The Buddha explained that suffering is born when we demand permanence from what is impermanent. Power, youth, wealth, and relationships are like passing clouds, beautiful, but temporary. When we mistake them for something solid, pain follows. In the teachings found in the Dhammapada, the Buddha reminds us that wisdom begins when we stop arguing with reality. The king now saw clearly: his suffering did not begin with loss, but with attachment. This meeting was not about restoring what was lost. It was about restoring clarity. The king understood that while time had taken many things, it had also given him something priceless: awareness. In humility he bowed. Not to time, not to fate, but to understanding. And in that moment, the king was richer than he had ever been. What this story teaches us today. At this point, the story quietly turns toward us. The king, his rise and fall, his meeting with Gautama Buddha, all of this is not distant history. It is a reflection of the human condition that continues even today. When life is favorable, we rarely think about impermanence. Success feels earned and permanent. Relationships feel secure. Health feels guaranteed. In such moments, we unconsciously make a contract with time, believing it will continue to serve us as it always has. And when time changes its course, we feel shocked. The Buddha taught that this shock is the true source of suffering. In the Dhammapada, he explains that the unwise person clings to pleasure and collapses in pain, while the wise person understands that both are temporary. This understanding creates balance. The king suffered deeply because he believed his good days defined him. When those days ended, he felt empty. But once he understood that Waqt Sabka Badalta Hai, his suffering softened. He no longer saw change as an enemy, but as a teacher. This teaching is especially important in modern life, where we are constantly encouraged to chase stability, control, and certainty. The Buddha offers a quieter wisdom: learn to stand steady even as life changes. When success comes, enjoy it, but do not cling. When difficulty arrives, endure it, but do not despair. Understanding impermanence does not make life meaningless. It makes it precious. Each moment becomes something to be lived fully, not possessed. The story teaches us that peace does not come from stopping time, but from moving with it. When we accept that change is natural, we stop fighting life, and in that acceptance, a deep calm begins to grow. The wise way to walk with time. Dear seeker, after understanding that Waqt Sabka Badalta Hai, the next question naturally arises: how should we live with this truth? The Buddha did not stop at describing impermanence, he showed how to meet it with wisdom. Gautama Buddha taught that the wise person neither clings to good times nor collapses during difficult ones. This balance is not indifference, it is clarity. It is the ability to remain present without being ruled by fear or desire. When time brings success, the wise enjoy it with gratitude, knowing it will pass. When time brings hardship, they endure it with patience, knowing it too will pass. This understanding prevents arrogance in prosperity and despair in difficulty. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha reminds us that peace comes from right understanding, not from controlling circumstances. We cannot command time, but we can train the mind to respond wisely. The Buddha also taught non-attachment, not as withdrawal from life, but as freedom from unnecessary suffering. Non-attachment allows us to love deeply without fear, work sincerely without obsession, and face loss without bitterness. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the wise person asks, "What is this moment teaching me?" This simple shift changes everything. Time becomes a guide rather than an enemy. Change becomes a teacher rather than a punishment. The king in the story learned this truth through loss. We need not wait for loss to learn it. By reflecting now, by observing change in small moments, moods, seasons, relationships, we prepare the mind for larger shifts. Walking with time requires patience, humility, and awareness. But it leads to a quiet strength that cannot be taken away. When you walk with time instead of against it, life becomes lighter, not because nothing changes, but because you understand that change is the nature of life itself. Dear seeker, as we come to the end of this story, let us pause for a moment, not to analyze, but to feel. Time is moving even now. Each breath arises and passes. Each moment becomes memory. This is not something to fear, it is something to understand. Through the wisdom of Gautama Buddha, we are reminded that change is not a punishment given by life, but a law that governs it. When we fight this law, suffering grows. When we understand it, peace becomes possible. The story of the king teaches us that loss is not always a sign of failure. Sometimes, it is an invitation to see more clearly. What was taken away from him did not leave him empty, it left him awake. And what awakened him was not suffering itself, but the understanding that came from it. If you are facing a difficult time in your life, remember this gently, Waqt Badalta Hai. And if you are enjoying success and comfort, remember this too, Waqt Badalta Hai. Holding both truths with balance protects the heart from arrogance and despair. The Buddha did not teach us to escape life. He taught us to walk through it with awareness, to accept joy without clinging, to endure pain without losing hope, to live fully yet lightly. As you return to your day, carry this understanding with you. Let change humble you, but not frighten you. Let time teach you, not harden you. May you learn to trust life's movement. May your heart remain steady through change. May wisdom grow quietly within you. Thank you for listening with patience and openness. The path does not end here, it continues, moment by moment, as you walk gently with time.